Diddy just tried to sue NBC for $100 million, and the judge used his own words to destroy him in court. But here's what nobody is talking about. The one thing Diddy said at his sentencing that he probably wishes he could take back might have just made everything worse than prison ever could. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Diddy's legal team is in full panic mode right now. So let me set the scene for you. It's January 2025. Diddy is already sitting in a federal detention center, already indicted on racketeering and serious federal charges, already the most talked about man on the internet. And then Peacock drops a documentary called Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy. Now you'd think a man in that position would keep his head down, stay quiet, let his lawyers do the talking. But no. Diddy looked at that documentary, looked at his already destroyed reputation, looked at the fact that he was sitting in a jail cell, and decided the smart move was to sue NBC and Peacock for $100 million. That's not a typo. $100 million. Now the question you should already be asking yourself is, what exactly was in that documentary that made Diddy so angry he was willing to go to war with one of the biggest media companies on the planet? Because it wasn't just gossip. It wasn't just people talking. The documentary went there. It connected Diddy to the death of Kim Porter, his ex-partner and the mother of 3 of his children, who passed away suddenly in 2018. The official cause of death was lobar pneumonia, but the documentary left the door wide open for a very different story. And here's the moment that broke the internet when it aired. Kim Porter's own son, Quincy, sat down for an interview on camera, looked straight into the lens, and said the word murder. Then paused, then asked, "Am I supposed to say allegedly?" Let that sink in. Her own son, on camera, on a major streaming platform, and Diddy thought suing NBC was going to make that go away. But it gets worse, and I mean significantly worse, because Diddy didn't just have the Kim Porter angle working against him in this lawsuit. The documentary also went after something even darker, something that has been whispered about in hip-hop circles for decades. The connection between Diddy and the murder of the notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace, Biggie, one of the greatest rappers to ever live, shot dead in Los Angeles in 1997 at just 24 years old, a case that has never officially been solved. And the documentary put that question directly on screen, in front of millions of Peacock subscribers, with Diddy's name attached to it. Now Diddy's legal team called all of this fresh lies and conspiracy theories. They said the documentary was deeply distressing, offensive, reckless, and malicious. They wanted it treated as defamation. They wanted NBC to pay. And on paper, you might think they had a case. Because if someone puts your name next to 2 deaths on a major streaming platform, and you're already in prison fighting for your life, that feels like it should count for something legally, right? Here's where it gets interesting. And honestly, sitting here in Oslo watching this case unfold from the outside, this is the part that made me stop and reread it twice. Because the argument NBC came back with was so simple, so brutal, and so legally clean that it essentially made Diddy's entire lawsuit collapse before it even got started. NBC didn't argue the documentary was perfect. They didn't argue every single detail was verified. They did something much smarter than that. They pointed at Diddy and said, "Your reputation was already gone before we ever touched you. So how exactly did we damage something that was already destroyed?"
Sean Diddy Combs sues NBC for $100 million over its Peacock documentary about him. According to docs obtained by E! News February 12th, the Bad Boy Records founder filed a lawsuit against NBC Universal seeking $100 million after Peacock, the streaming service owned by the media company, released the documentary Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy.
And that right there is where Diddy's legal team walked straight into a trap they built themselves. Because to win a defamation case, you have to prove one very specific thing. You have to prove that what was published actually damaged your reputation. That before the documentary aired, people thought one thing about you, and after it aired, people thought something significantly worse. That's the legal standard. And Judge Phaedra F. Perry Bond looked at Diddy's argument, looked at the evidence, and essentially said, "Are you serious right now?" Because by the time that Peacock documentary dropped in January 2025, Diddy had already been hit with a federal indictment for racketeering and what he was accused of. He had already been exposed by the hotel surveillance footage showing him physically attacking Cassie in a hallway. He had already become the subject of more than 25 lawsuits related to sexual misconduct. His name was already the punchline, the cautionary tale, and the villain of every conversation happening in music, in media, and on every timeline on the internet. The judge ruled that his public image had already been, and I'm quoting directly here, tarnished by the numerous lawsuits, domestic violence video, press coverage, and criminal indictment prior to the documentary's publication. In other words, NBC didn't ruin Diddy's reputation. Diddy ruined Diddy's reputation. The documentary just showed up to a crime scene that was already cold. And the legal term for this, the doctrine that Judge Perry Bond applied to throw the entire case out, is called the libel-proof plaintiff doctrine, which is essentially the court's way of saying, your reputation was already so destroyed that nobody could make it meaningfully worse. Think about that for a second. A federal judge looked at Sean Combs, one of the most powerful men in the history of the music industry, and ruled that he was legally undamageable. Not because he was innocent, but because the damage was already total. But here is the part that nobody is talking about. The part that made this case go from a legal defeat to a full catastrophic self-destruction. Because NBC didn't just win on the libel-proof doctrine alone, they had a second weapon. And Diddy handed it to them personally, in court, on the record, in front of a federal judge. Cast your mind back to October 2025, Diddy's sentencing hearing. The courtroom is packed. His entire family is there. The press corps is there. The gallery is full. And after everything, after all the lawyers and all the arguments and all the back and forth, Diddy stands up and he speaks for himself. And the words that came out of his mouth in that moment, the words he chose in front of a federal judge, were these: because of my decisions, I lost my freedom. I lost my career. I totally destroyed my reputation. I totally destroyed my reputation. His words, his voice, his admission, on the record, in a federal courtroom. And NBC's legal team took those exact words and walked them straight into the defamation case. Their argument was devastatingly simple. How can you claim that our documentary destroyed your reputation when you already stood up in court and told a federal judge that you destroyed it yourself? And the judge agreed, completely. Every single claim Diddy filed against NBC, against Peacock, against the production company, dismissed. All of it, gone.
In the filing, Combs, who is currently in jail on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, accuses NBC Universal of defamation and alleged that the company maliciously and recklessly broadcast the documentary, which included claims that the rapper committed crimes like serial murder and sexual assault of minors.
The case that was supposed to be worth $100 million ended with Diddy getting absolutely nothing. And the reaction from NBC's legal team said everything. Their lawyers stood up after the ruling and said this was an important ruling that protects filmmakers and journalists. They weren't just celebrating a win, they were sending a message to every powerful person watching. Try to silence the truth, and we will use your own confession to bury you. Now let's talk about what this actually means going forward. Because this lawsuit being dismissed is not just a legal story, it is a signal. And if you have been following the Diddy situation as closely as we have here at Fame Insight, you already know that this is not the only lawsuit Diddy was threatening to file. Reports confirmed that Diddy's legal team was also preparing to go after Netflix and 50 Cent over the documentary series Sean Combs' The Reckoning, a series that allegedly pulled back even more layers on Diddy's empire than the Peacock documentary ever did. Now here's what's interesting. Ever since this NBC ruling dropped, that Netflix and 50 Cent lawsuit threat has gone completely quiet. No filings, no announcements, no press releases from Diddy's legal team, nothing. And you have to ask yourself why. Because if you were Diddy's lawyer and you just watched your $100 million case against NBC get thrown out in the most humiliating way possible, using your own client's words against him, would you be rushing to file another defamation lawsuit against 50 Cent? Who has been waiting for this fight since day one? Who has been publicly taunting Diddy for months? Who would absolutely love nothing more than to sit across from Diddy's legal team in a courtroom and let a judge read back every single thing Diddy said at his sentencing? No, you would not. And that silence from Diddy's camp right now is the loudest thing happening in this entire story. But wait, because there is still one more thing that people are completely sleeping on. And this is the part that changes everything about what happens next for Sean Combs. Because while everyone was watching the NBC lawsuit get thrown out, something else was quietly moving through the legal system at the exact same time: Diddy's criminal appeal. See, Diddy was convicted last summer on 2 counts of violating the Mann Act, which is the federal law that prohibits transporting people across state lines for the federal violations. He was sentenced to serve time in a New Jersey federal prison, but his legal team filed an appeal, and that appeal is currently sitting in front of a trio of federal judges at the U.S. Court of Appeals, waiting for a ruling. Now here is why this matters in the context of everything we just talked about. Diddy's entire legal strategy since his conviction has been built around 2 things: fighting the criminal conviction on appeal, and trying to use civil lawsuits to control the narrative about who he is and what he did. The NBC lawsuit was supposed to be the opening move in that narrative war. The message was supposed to be, "We will come after anyone who says things about us that we don't like."
The filing reads, in making and broadcasting these falsehoods, among others, defendants seek only to capitalize on the public's appetite for scandal, without any regard for the truth, and at the expense of Mr. Combs' right to a fair trial.
We will make it expensive. We will make it painful. We will make media companies think twice before they put our name on screen. And that strategy just collapsed completely. The libel-proof ruling didn't just dismiss one lawsuit. It essentially told every court, every journalist, and every documentarian on the planet that Sean Combs has no legal shield left. His reputation is already ruled destroyed by a federal judge, which means anyone can now report on him, document him, investigate him, with significantly less legal risk than before. The walls that money and power used to build around people like Diddy are gone, and the criminal appeal is still coming, and the 25+ civil lawsuits from his victims are still moving forward. And the question that everyone in that legal world is now asking behind closed doors is whether a man who just admitted in open court that he totally destroyed his own reputation has any real path left out of this. And that brings us to the question nobody has been able to answer. When Diddy stood up in that courtroom and said, "I totally destroyed my reputation," did he know what he was handing to NBC's legal team? Or was he playing an entirely different game? Because here is the angle that changes how you read that entire moment. At the time of that sentencing, Diddy's team was quietly working another angle behind the scenes. Reports suggest there were conversations happening about a potential presidential pardon. And if you are building a case for a pardon, you need to look like a broken man, a reformed man, a man who has taken full accountability and is no longer a threat to anyone. And "I totally destroyed my reputation" fits that narrative perfectly. It sounds like rock bottom. It sounds like remorse. It sounds like exactly what you say when you are trying to convince the most powerful office in the world to give you a second chance. So the question is, was that statement calculated? Was it a strategic move to position himself for a pardon that never came? Or did his lawyers genuinely not see how NBC would use those words to dismantle a $100 million lawsuit? Because both answers are devastating in completely different ways. If it was calculated, it means Diddy gambled his entire legal strategy on a pardon that never materialized and lost everything. If it was a mistake, it means the most expensive legal team money can buy just handed NBC the single most powerful weapon in the entire case without realizing what they were doing. Either way, those 6 words are now permanently embedded in the legal record, and they are not going anywhere. Now let's talk about the thing that the mainstream media has been almost completely silent on, because the NBC lawsuit getting dismissed is actually the smallest legal problem Diddy has right now, the one that should be keeping him up at night, the one that his legal team is genuinely terrified about, is what is sitting inside those 25+ civil lawsuits that are still actively moving through the court system. And I need you to understand something important here. The criminal trial had rules. Strict federal rules about what evidence could be presented, what witnesses could testify, what information the jury was allowed to hear. There were things that prosecutors wanted to introduce that the judge would not allow. Details that never made it into the courtroom.
In particular, Combs alleges that the documentary, released on Peacock on January 14th, implied he killed his ex, Kim Porter, who died in 2018 at age 47. Kim dated Combs on and off for over a decade before they split in 2007.
Names that were never spoken out loud during the trial. Civil cases are different. Civil cases have a much lower burden of proof. Civil cases have broader discovery rules, which means Diddy's legal team can be forced to hand over documents, communications, financial records, and information that was completely protected during the criminal trial. And here is what makes this genuinely dangerous for Diddy, in a way the criminal conviction never was. The people filing these civil lawsuits are not the government. They are individuals. Real people with real stories and real lawyers who have been building their cases for months, in some cases years. And every single one of them just watched a federal judge rule that Diddy's reputation is already legally destroyed, which means the libel-proof doctrine that just saved NBC could actually work against Diddy in a completely different way in the civil cases. Because if a judge has already ruled that his reputation was already in ruins before any of this went public, what does that tell you about what was actually known about Sean Combs behind closed doors, long before any of us ever heard the name Cassie Ventura in a legal filing? And this is the part that I think gets lost in all the legal noise. All the talk about doctrines and dismissals and appeal rulings and $100 million lawsuits. Because behind every single one of those 25 civil cases, there is a person. A real human being who says Sean Combs did something to them that changed their life permanently. And for years, for decades in some cases, those people had no voice. Because when you are up against someone with Diddy's level of money and power and industry connections, speaking out is not just scary, it is dangerous. We already know that NDAs were used. We already know that settlements were paid quietly. We already know that people in Diddy's circle had their careers threatened, their reputations managed, and their stories buried under layers of legal paperwork and financial pressure. And now, sitting in a federal prison in New Jersey, Diddy has just watched a judge rule that his reputation is legally undamageable, which sounds like a loss for him in the NBC case. But think about what that same ruling means for the people who spent years being silenced. Because every time someone tried to speak about what Diddy allegedly did, the response from his camp was always the same. You will be sued. You will be destroyed. We have more money and more lawyers than you will ever see in your lifetime. That threat only works if the person making it has something left to protect. A reputation worth defending. A legal shield worth maintaining. And the federal judge just ruled, in writing on the record, that Sean Combs has none of that left. The shield is gone. The threat is empty. And the people who were silenced for years are now filing civil lawsuits in a legal environment where the most powerful weapon Diddy ever had has already been taken off the table by his own words in a federal courtroom.
The lawsuit states, the documentary maliciously accuses Mr. Combs of murdering the love of his life and mother to his children, Kimberly Porter, despite the fact that the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office has confirmed that her death was from natural causes and that there has never been any evidence of foul play.
That is not just a legal development. That is a turning point. And the question that nobody can answer yet is how many more people are still waiting to come forward now that they know the threat is gone. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. And if you have been following this channel, you already knew this was coming. Because we have been saying since day one that every move Diddy makes in that courtroom is making things worse. Not better, worse. And this NBC lawsuit is the proof. He looked at a Peacock documentary, decided he was going to sue for $100 million, and walked straight into the most catastrophic legal own goal of this entire saga. The judge didn't just dismiss the case. She dismantled it, using his own words, using his own admission, using the exact statement his team probably thought was going to help him walk out of prison early. And what we are left with right now is a man who is lost on every single front simultaneously. The criminal conviction is locked in, the appeal is unresolved, the pardon never came. The Netflix and 50 Cent lawsuit threats went completely silent the moment this ruling dropped. And the 25-plus civil cases are still moving forward in a legal landscape where Diddy has no reputation left to protect and no shield left to hide behind. But here's the bigger picture that I want us to sit with together, because this is not just a Diddy story. This is a story about what happens when power finally runs out. For decades, the music industry operated on a simple principle: money buys silence, lawyers buy time, and fame buys a level of protection that ordinary people never get access to. And one by one, every single tool that principle depends on is being stripped away. The silence is broken, the lawyers are losing, the pardon went nowhere. And the fame? A federal judge just ruled that the fame is already gone. And we have been watching it happen in real time, together, on this channel. What comes next for Sean Combs is going to play out in civil courtrooms, appeals courts, and potentially in front of a jury again. And I promise you this, Fame Insight is going to be here for every single development, because that is what we do. We watch, we break it down, and we make sure nothing gets buried. Now I want to hear from you, because this community has been calling Diddy's moves correctly for months now. Do you think his legal team knew exactly what they were doing when they let him make that sentencing statement? Or did they just hand NBC the weapon that destroyed their own case? Drop your read in the comments. I want to know what this community thinks. And if you want to understand what is actually sitting inside those 25 civil lawsuits, the details that never came out during the criminal trial, the names that are still being protected. We broke that down in a previous video right here on Fame Insight. If you have been with us, you already know how deep that one goes. If you are just finding us now, that is where you need to go next. I will see you there.